views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome, good people of the Bronx and beyond. My name is Henry Ovalles, and I'm your host for Life in Art. On this show, we will bring you engaging and personal conversations with artists with whom you may not be familiar, people who have been working on their craft for at least a decade and are at a crossroads where passion meets necessity. We'll discuss creativity and inspiration with our guest artists, but also find out what it takes to balance the struggles of practical life while pursuing their passions. Our guest today is a New York City-based hip-hop artist. He is 1/4 of the Winner Circle group, but is also a solo artist in his own right. Drawing inspiration from various musical genres, he brings a fresh sound and voice while still remaining true to the roots of hip-hop. Today we learn about Chukk Be's Life in Art.
Lifestyles of the broken, shameless. Some die nameless, blood soaked in the pavement. Some live brainless, those the ones we estranged with. Guess I prefer to be strangers. Y'all really think I'ma change when the fame come blame me for lack of effort? Nah, crazy, my drive is something like Ryan Gosling's. One of the illest in my city. So fuck with me, your girl already in love with me. Comfortably coasting, I'm in my lane now. 4-door, something Corbin is twisting something up. Runner up, no longer we winning, you can hear it. Just look at this progression, they fucking fear it. Flow cold, rappers better bundle up. Need a heat check, no worries, we keep the summer tucked. Up. Nothing much, they telling me that I'm blessed now. Best now, give me a minute, then put your bets down.
And here we are in the studio with my friend Chukk Be. So Chukk, when I first met you, I was actually at Lehman College, and I knew you first sort of as a hip-hop dancer with Hip Hop Theory. I saw you do a couple of plays, but now you've sort of immersed yourself, totally into rap and hip-hop. So want to get into that, but let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
In the Bronx, all over the place, actually. South Bronx. Most recently, probably about 8 years ago, I was in Co-op City.
Okay.
And then I moved to Brooklyn about 7, 8 years ago, and I've been there since.
All right, so Bronx and Brooklyn mostly.
Yeah.
And where did you go to school here in the Bronx?
I went to high school at Columbus, which I don't even think exists anymore.
I'm not sure. Yeah, they probably split it up.
Yeah, something's going on with that. But yeah, I went to Columbus. I went to Truman for a short spell. And then I dropped out and started working full time when I was 17, 18.
Okay, and then after that, did you go for an associate's degree or no, or that's?
No, it's funny. So I was working a full-time job at a North Central hospital, and I was there for maybe 6 years, and I just kind of was over it.
Okay.
So I quit and went back to school for audio engineering and production at the Institute of Audio Research in the West
awesome.
Village.
And how long was that program?
A little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So talk to me a little bit about your family life. You have any brothers, sisters?
2 younger sisters.
2 younger sisters.
Yeah.
You're the oldest.
Yeah.
And what's the age difference there?
My youngest sister is 13, and my sister after that is 23.
Okay. And what's the story with your parents? Still together? Are they still with us?
Oh, no. My mom's been a single parent for as long as I can remember.
Okay.
Dad's kind of been in and out. We don't have the greatest relationship, so
right.
It's mainly, I grew up with my mom's side of the family, so that's kind of where I'm rooted for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me then a little bit about when, art entered your life. Was it, hip hop right away, or was it some sort of other art form?
Poetry, actually.
Okay.
It's funny because in high school, I hated writing with a passion. Like it wasn't doing it for me. Funny, years later, it's like, that's kind of how I'm expressing myself for the most part. It started with poetry, and I didn't really think about rap much. It was hard for me to take my poetry and put it to music. It wasn't intended for music. So I'd always been doing it here and there for a while, and then it just kind of progressed after a few years.
All right, and what do you think? Do you remember what sparked the poetry, you know, Gina? Was it watching somebody
Depression,
reading something?
actually.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah. I have these random bouts of depression every once and again. And I started when I was in my early 20s, which kind of led to the writing. And that was kind of a really good outlet for me at that time. And that's usually when most of my writing would happen. It was like when I was depressed, it would just kind of be like, all right, I need to figure something out. You know, maybe if I write, you know, it'll help, which it did, you know, a lot.
Wow. And is that something that someone recommended to you, or did you just sort of,
No,
you
it
know?
just kind of happened that way.
Okay.
It was just kind of I can't explain it. It just happened that way. And then I was like, you know, this feels good. You know?
Right.
So like it just kind of snowballed from there.
So as far as then the first sort of, you know, poetry that you were writing, and you're saying this was in your early 20s.
Yeah.
So you're saying that sort of depression is what inspired you,
Yeah,
for lack of
oddly
a better
enough,
word,
yeah.
to do it. So what were you writing about? Was it, you know, stuff that was going on in your life?
Stuff that was going on in my life, stuff that was going on in the world, or with my generation at the time. Just speaking about, you know, people my age and kind of the difficulties of growing up in a city and chasing dreams and this kind of stuff. And then also writing about the depression. You know, there were times that I had written about, you know, suicide, and not with the intent of committing it, but just kind of speaking on it.
Right.
And not in a judgmental kind of way. You know, it was just like, this is how I feel. I'm gonna put it into words, and you know, hopefully somebody finds something in that.
Right. So you just sort of explore the theme.
Yeah. I mean, it could get dark sometimes,
Sure.
a lot of times in
Sure.
that kind of mind frame, but
Yeah.
it helps.
And I mean, yeah, talking about depression, luckily I think now, I believe that there's more awareness about depression, because I think, you know, remembering back to my childhood and my teenage years, it was something to sort of be afraid of or not be talked about, or it would be the flip side where people would talk about it and say, oh yeah, I'm depressed, but they would just sort of throw that word out there without really understanding.
Absolutely.
They might have been sad, but no, depression is something
Totally
else.
different.
So for you, sort of, you know, you found that, and the way to deal with that and sort of heal yourself was this outlet of writing poetry. How about when you write now? Is that?
It still plays a factor sometimes. I mean, I find I write the most when I'm depressed.
Right.
It's not as extreme as it was when I was younger, just because I'm more of aware of it and can kind of manage it. But I do use it as a tool for my writing.
Right.
A lot of stuff that I've written has been in that kind of mind frame. And it's, I try to get it out as quickly as possible, because it's hard to go back to that space when you're not there.
Yeah.
You know, like if I'm depressed for a month and then 2 months later I'm not, and I try to go back to that place, I can't. You know, like, so when I'm there, it's like I try to get everything out, you know,
Right.
while I'm in it.
And how does it feel then, going back, we're still talking about poetry now, when you're out of that state and you know, go back and look at what you wrote, what does that?
It's interesting. Just to see where I was at that point. I mean, this is 10, 12, 13 years ago.
Right.
So it's just funny to see it, and it's one of those like, oh, if I would have known now what I know then, maybe it would have been handled a little differently, just as far as how I was feeling and talking about it with other people.
Right.
But at the same time, it kind of started this. So it's really cool to look back and dig in that book and see and kind of relive those feelings and stuff like that.
No, and it's definitely good that, you know, you use that as an outlet for, you know, for good in your life and to create then positive things. So actually we're going to take a break with this first segment, and then the next segment we'll see how, you know, that evolved into your life as a, you know, as a rapper now, and hopefully, you know, sunnier days.
It's getting there.
Right. So we have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more about Chukk Be when we return.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Teachers today are finding new ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable.
Welcome back to A Life in Art. We are here with MC Chukk Be. So Chukk, let's talk a little bit then about how your evolution from, writing poetry and then that evolving. When does that start turning into music?
Probably, seriously, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was at Lehman for a while, not as a student. It felt like it.
Yeah, talk to me about that. How did that happen?
I was a friend of mine from high school, Eddie Torres. He
Yep, the first guest on this show, actually.
Really?
Yeah, he was episode number 1.
Oh,
yeah.
that's great. Love that guy. He's a really good guy. He was directing a play, and he asked me to audition. It almost felt, though, like it was like, hey, I want you to do this. You're going to audition, but I want you to do this kind of deal.
Right.
And I had never acted before. I had no experience. And I got it. And when I was here, I was introduced to Maurice Dean. And rest in peace.
Yeah.
And I was just walking around dancing to music in my head for no apparent reason. And he saw it and he was like, hey, you think you can pick up choreography? And I was like, I don't know, probably, sure. And then 3 years in and I was dancing for him for Hip Hop
Right.
Theory. And it came to a point where I enjoyed it and I was okay at it. I wasn't great by any means.
I beg to differ.
Okay, fair enough. But it wasn't something that I had the love and dedication for. I enjoyed doing it, but I didn't have it in me to go as hard as a Mo would.
Right.
Because Mo loved it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started kind of delving into. I had a friend named Don Sereno who had been rapping for maybe 10 years prior to that. And I would go to his house and watch him go through his process. And I was like, well, I can do that, like an idiot. And he was like, all right, well, come on, let's try it. And the first thing I did was horrible. It was like, for me, it was,
Right.
listening to it now. But he kind of walked me into it a little bit. And I was doing it more as a hobby and a way to kind of continue the writing. Like, I wasn't really doing a lot of poetry at the time.
Right.
Because I was doing so many other things. But I still needed that outlet.
Sure.
So it ended up being music. And then maybe 2 or 3 years after those interactions with Don was when I was like, all right, I'm pretty good at this. And I really love doing it. Maybe I should kind of take it a little more seriously.
And at that point where you were, sort of doing it with Don for 2 or 3 years, how?
I would do like, he would have these projects and I would do a guest verse here and there, or there would be a group of us and it would be like, all right, whoever finishes their verse first gets on the song.
Right.
And at that time, it would take me, a week to write a 16-bar verse, so I didn't get on a lot of the stuff. But being in the process and watching everybody go through their thing was really helpful in helping me with my process and writing quicker.
Yeah. And where do you think that confidence in you came from to, even put your foot into the water, so to speak, because you talked about Eddie Torres telling, I want you to be in this play. And you're like, all right, I've never acted, but I'll give it a shot. Yeah. And then Maurice Dean singing in the hallway, dancing, like, yeah. I could probably pick up choreography. Yeah. Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know, honestly. I was never really into the arts as a kid. This all kind of happened into adulthood.
Right.
And it was more of a, let's see if I can. And then it just so happens that a lot of stuff I tried, I was decent at. So that's what kind of gave me the confidence to really delve into the music. And it was like, all right, well, if I try hard enough, that I'll probably be good at this.
Right.
It just so happens that this is the thing that I'm really good at, and really love doing. So it was easy to put that time and effort in and make myself better.
Right, it didn't feel so much like work, and it's cool that you were able to find the camaraderie of, the group of people that you were working with, and you guys were feeding off of each other.
Which is rare to find now. I mean, I don't know a lot of other, I know a lot of artists, but I don't know a lot of other rappers.
Right.
And it's sometimes it's hard when you're not around a group of similar artists.
Yeah.
I can be around a bunch of actors and dancers, but it's not the same.
Yeah, when you're with like-minded people, it just sort of breeds,
musicians.
creativity.
Yeah.
So what are some of your musical influences? Like, growing up, were you always listening to rap and hip hop?
Yeah, I remember the first song I ever heard, my cousin, I was driving with, she was driving in a car and I was in the back seat and she played Children's Story, Slick Rick. Yeah. And this was like late 80s, early 90s. And I was like hooked from there. But rap wasn't always the biggest thing for me. Like there was a point in maybe like the late 90s where like I just stopped listening to rap music. And it was just like classic rock, 90s rock, R&B, soul music, blues, jazz, like stuff like that. And then I kind of segued back into hip hop, and it's funny, like listening to all those other genres and then going back to hip hop and like hearing samples of all these songs that I heard previously, like the originals. I'm like, oh, that's kind of great. All right.
Yeah.
Like I get where it's going now.
Right. And now I want you to talk to me a little bit about just the process of how it works, as a up and coming rapper. With you, you have your lyrics and then the beats come later. Where do you get your beats from? Do you sample music? How does that work?
SoundCloud. So SoundCloud, surprisingly, I don't want to say surprisingly, but they have a lot of really talented artists on there. Right. And a lot of them don't really even want money. They just want recognition. If you use my song, just give me credit.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that community existed on SoundCloud.
Yeah, I've, all of the, mainly, I would say 80-90% of the producers I've used have been through SoundCloud. And it's all been the same thing. And most of them are from overseas. I've worked with producers from Australia, England, Spain. Currently, I'm working with an artist from Spain now, whose music is unbelievable. And he found me through SoundCloud and then contacted me through Twitter. And
wow.
And we started working through there. I've never met this guy. I've never spoken to him.
But you collaborated on a bunch of, wow.
He's actually producing my whole new project that's coming out now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
see, modern technology.
Seriously, I wouldn't have, 10 years ago, I don't know what I would have been doing. I would have been probably, using someone's music off of, YouTube, which is how I started.
Right.
Like I would just grab music off of YouTube and none of this was my music,
right,
obviously.
Just stealing music.
Yeah, pretty much. Stealing music and then writing my versions of these songs.
Right.
I'm not a writer who can write without the music because the music is what gives me the
idea. So it happens
together
for you.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's actually take a quick pause right there, and then in our last segment, I want to dig deeper into that and about, the importance of, in rapping, about freestyling and battles and all that jazz.
Gotcha.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more from Chukk right after this break.
We finally bought a place.
You seriously have enough saved to do that?
We've been putting a little aside each month.
So at the end of the month, we have nothing left to save. How is my account overdrawn?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today, I'm just an aluminum can, but one day, I could be a stadium.
And we're back on The Life and Art with hip-hop artist Chukk Be. So Chukk, when we left off, you were talking about sort of the SoundCloud community and how modern technology, has assisted you there. And when you started out, you were basically, ripping samples off of YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, did you actually put anything out with the music that you were taking from there?
Yeah, my first project, about 3 years ago, going on 4 years ago now, there were only maybe 3 original produced songs on there, and it was like an 11-track mixtape. Everything else was stuff that I grabbed off of YouTube and stuff like that. And it was just, I was at a point where previously I had done guest spots on these collaborative projects with rappers and singers from the Bronx called The Bronx is Burning. There were 2 installments, and I've had a handful of songs on each. And then those people were kind of like, all right, so when's your thing coming out? And I'm like, I didn't think about that. I didn't know. And it kind of snowballed from there. And they would always like message me, and they're like, hey, so how's it coming? What's going on? How far are you? And I was like, all right, maybe I should actually put an effort into this.
Yeah.
So the first year I moved to Brooklyn is when I kind of started. And then I went.
And what prompted that move to Brooklyn? Is it, I mean, everyone knows that Brooklyn right now, as far as the artistic scene is sort of, you know, blowing up, although the Bronx has a lot of great things happening.
And I'm thinking about coming back, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But was it sort of artistically influenced you moved there?
It was more of, at that point, I would have moved anywhere.
You just needed something different.
I needed to get out of the Bronx.
All right.
And I had been staying at that point with my mom. Once I quit my job and went back to school, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go stay with my mom for a while just to get things figured out. And as soon as the opportunity came to head out somewhere, I jumped on it.
I see.
So it was more out of necessity than just picking Brooklyn.
So what was the opportunity? A friend of yours asking for a roommate, or?
One of my coworkers, who's an actor, he was just like, hey, I live with 2 other guys. One of them is leaving. We have this room open. You know, how would you feel about coming? I was like, where is it? He's like, Brooklyn. I was like, let me think about that for a second.
Right.
And then after like a day, I was like, yeah, I'm down.
All right.
Yeah.
So actually talk to me a little bit about that. That's a theme that we like to discuss on this show. How are the bills paid? What are the survival jobs? How you make it through the day?
So when I first started with the music, I was I was an usher and head of security at New World Stages, which is off-Broadway theater in Midtown.
Right.
And I had been doing that for a while, up until maybe about a year ago. And now I'm a concierge at a luxury residential building in Midtown.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of, it gotten to the point where I wasn't making enough money at the theater to support myself and to invest in myself for the music. Because it gets to a certain point where you're just gonna have to put money in.
Yeah.
You can only do things for free, but for so long.
Yep.
So I needed, it was a real struggle to get myself to get an adult job, like a real 9 to 5 or 3 to 11 in my case.
Okay.
And still try to pursue music.
Right.
It's really hard working a full-time job and trying to pursue your dream.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and what I would think is that being at New World Stages where, it's an off-Broadway venue, but it has like a bar and there's some music stuff that happens there also. I would think that, being surrounded by artists and artistic environment would sort of nourish you, but it came to a point where you felt that you needed to get out of there to keep going.
It was more so the money than the atmosphere.
I see.
I had met a lot of great people who I still keep in contact with and who still, I shot a video for a single last year, and it was this director, Daniel Armando, independent film director, and he was my coworker, so he shot my video for free.
Oh, awesome!
And it came out great. And actually, he just directed a film that's making its rounds around the indie circuit called "When I'm With You," and I have a song on in the movie, on the soundtrack. So it's kind of like we helped each other out in that sense, but. That community was great, and it helped me a lot in just developing I don't want to say my act, but me on stage. I wasn't always comfortable being on stage.
Right.
Mo helped me out a lot.
With your
dance. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Not having the confidence in myself as a performer, let alone performing in front of hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So he helped me with that, and then working at the theater kind of just, to help me along even more. And so where I'm now, I'm comfortable.
Now let me ask you this, Chukk, because I think with hip hop specifically, probably more so than any other art form, I feel like there's hip hop fans really want authenticity. Like you can't fake it, and if you do and they find out that you're faking it, More so than, like, for example, if even within music, if someone writes a song for Mariah Carey and then she goes off and, you know, sings the crap out of it and just makes it this big hit, it's amazing, you know, and you can do that. But in hip hop, if you don't write your own stuff, if you're not able to, you know, freestyle on the moment right there, people will question right away your integrity and if you're supposed to be there. So why do you think that is, and how do you feel about that? And
it's the hip hop genre and its fans are it's really interesting because they're kind of a fickle bunch.
Okay.
And I'm speaking about myself, you know, also. It's kind of the only genre where the older you get, the less fans care about you. It's a real, like, in the moment kind of genre of music. As far as like the writing, I think it's changed a little bit. I don't think fans now care as much about authenticity, which is
not sure if it's good or
I'm
bad.
I'm not sure how that works right now. I think as long as they enjoy the music, they don't really care who wrote it. But at the same time, there's a core hip hop fan base who really cares about that authenticity. And the thing about hip hop is that it was you were kind of being a reporter and letting people know about your experiences and the experiences of others in your community and in your neighborhood. So if you weren't writing your music, it wasn't factual.
Right.
And people couldn't or can't identify with these stories. I think it's changed a lot now, but there's still that core group of fans who really care about that. I care about it.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're good at your craft, and I enjoy the music, I can't complain too much, you know? Like, there's a difference between the entertainment. You know, there are a lot of artists who are entertainers.
Yeah.
And that's okay. If you want that kind of thing, then you can have that. That's the thing about music and art in general, is that there's so much to consume. You know, you can pick and choose what you want. You don't have to listen to the guy who doesn't write his own rap. You can listen to the guy who writes his own
Right, and
stuff.
it's all sort of valid within its, you know, in its own right. You know,
Absolutely. Like, you don't really hear a lot of artists in rap do covers.
Right.
You hear it everywhere else. But if you do a cover in rap, it's like there's this big taboo, like, oh, why are you reciting someone else's? It's just art, you know. Just if you really like something, you know, what they say, imitation's the sincerest form of flattery.
That's right. And speaking of that, it's been a pleasure, Chukk, to be able to cover a little bit of your life here on the show.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, as we tend to do. If you'd like to hear more music by Chukk Be, check out the links below. Thanks to Chukk Be for sharing his life and art with us. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. We want to encourage you to connect with us on social media. Visit us on Facebook and YouTube at A Life in Art, and Instagram and Twitter at A Life in Art TV. We'll be back with more stories from emerging artists when we return with A Life in Art.